for October 24th, 2022 to open at 5:34. And would everybody's had a chance to review the agenda, I assume? And could I get a motion for that, please? Councillor Hoekstra.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. Looks unanimous. Now, are there any, there was no further additions or deletions, obviously. Move on to new business. Council meeting dates. CAO Gowdy.
Point of order. Sorry, did we do the consent agenda?
There is a.
Oh, this is the organizational meeting. Sorry, I'm getting.
Thank you, Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. Before you do this evening is the proposed schedule from November 2022 to October 2023. It does mirror the schedule you've had in the 2021-2022 season, in that there is a single meeting in the months of December, June, July, and August, and committee meetings in the August, scheduled for August, an organizational meeting scheduled for October, and those dates where a statutory holiday falls on a Monday have been deferred to a Tuesday. If there's any questions or suggested changes, of course, you're free to do so.
Thank you, CEO Gowdy. Any questions regarding the schedule? Any concerns? Councillor Connick?
No concerns, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. So I was going to make the motion that council approve the regular and committee council meeting dates from November 2022 to October 23 as presented.
Thank you. Any further discussion? No, I'll call for the vote then. Thank you. Looks unanimous. So we'll move on to the deputy mayor roster.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. As you know, your procedural bylaw stipulates a 2-month rotation during which deputy mayors rotate amongst members of council, acting in the place of the mayor should the need arise during that time. The proposed rotation is there in front of you, with Councillor Hibbs being first on the list, followed by Councillor Dallas, Councillor Ross, Councillor Hoekstra, Councillor Connick, and Councillor Gullickson for the September-October of 2023 period.
Thank you. Any concerns regarding this item? Councillor Hoekstra.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have no concerns, so I move that council approve the proposed deputy mayor roster from November 2022 to October 2023.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll call the question then. So I'm sorry I did not see the vote on that. There we go. Waiting. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Thank you very much. It passed. I wasn't sure if it was all in favor. I think it was. Yes. We'll move on to the final one, or no, the final, I'm sorry, to councillor appointments and commissions, boards and committees. CEO Gowdy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. So as council is aware, it is the mayor's prerogative and privilege to present a first cut of committee appointments for councillor appointments to council commissions, boards, and committees. Those were adopted at the October 2021 meeting, and you're now here for the first round of reappointments for the 2022-2023 reappointments. The next known meeting dates are there before you, and I believe there has been no changes to that list, which was presented and adopted at the October 2021 meeting.
Thank you, CEO Gowdy. Any concerns or questions regarding this item? Councillor Conick?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. I would like to suggest one change, if I may. I've spoken with Councillor Ross already about this and the mayor, in fact, and I'm going to suggest that Councillor Ross be appointed to the Lacombe Days Committee and I taken off. Reason being, of course, Councillor Ross has run this committee very, very well the last number of years. He did it last year, even though he wasn't appointed, and he did a fabulous job. And I just figure we might as well make it official. He enjoys it. He does a good job, and we might as well just appoint him. So that's the only change, if possible. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other concerns or questions? Can I have a motion regarding that? Councillor Conick?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. I would then make that motion that we accept, the council approve the 2022-2023 council reappointments to council's boards, commissions, and committees as amended. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other concerns? No, I'll call the question. Mine didn't work. Try again, maybe. It's a good idea, yes. Okay, try it again. There we go. That looks better, yeah. Okay, it looks like it was unanimous. Thank you. No, it's needed to be amended, but it is the amended one. That's the one he read out anyway. Okay, CEO Gowdy, seating arrangements?
Seating arrangements have been proposed for no change from not from what you see today. Of course, Councillor Gullickson or Deputy Mayor Gullickson would normally be in his council seat and replaced by Mayor Creasy. So it has been proposed for the same seating arrangement as you've hopefully enjoyed from 2020 during 2022.
Thank you. Any concerns regarding this seating arrangement? Scott, do you want to move by the looks of it?
Thank you.
Councillor Dallas?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would like to put the motion forward that council endorse the proposed seating arrangements until the next organizational meeting tentatively scheduled for October 23rd, 2023.
Thank you. Any other concerns or statements? No, I'll call the vote then. Thank you. I guess that takes care of our main body of our new business of our organizational meeting. Can I get a motion to move in camera? Councillor Dallas,
Thank you. Motion to move in camera.
thank you. All those in favor? Oops, gotta wait to vote. I know, me too. Not working. I have to add that one. There we go. Thank you. All in is unanimous. So can we move into Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I will move that council appoint Graham Inns to the Municipal Library Board for the term starting October 25th, 2022 and ending October 24th, 2026.
Thank you for that. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Approved? Unanimous? Councillor Hibbs?
Might as well, I'm on a run. I'll move that council reappoint Larry Massot to the Municipal Library Board with a term starting January 1st, 2023 and ending December 31st, 2025.
Thank you for that. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Now we'll need an adjournment. Councillor Conick,
I would so move that we adjourn the organizational meeting.
thank you. All those in favor? Okay, we will now start our regular meeting. And I'll call to order at 5:49. It's nice that I can read that, not like our mayor. Cheap shot, it's okay, he's away, we can do that. So I just need any issues regarding the consent agenda? The items to be brought out? I would like to bring the CAO report out of the consent agenda, please. And we could make that where can we put that? CEO Gaudi, where would be a good spot for it? Want it right away?
Yep, 6.1 would be just fine.
6.1?
We number it.
Well, we have a 6.1 though, right? 6.5? 6.5, okay. We'll make it 6.5. Any other items to come out of the consent agenda? Oh, sorry, Councillor Hibbs, I didn't see too close. Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The minutes from the last regular council meeting, there are a couple of, I guess, omissions. Would that require removing them out of the consent agenda if that's the case? Okay. All right. So then I would ask that those be removed.
Okay, so anything else coming out of the consent agenda? Can you get a motion regarding the consent agenda, please? Councillor Hoekstra?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I move that we accept the consent agenda as amended.
Thank you for that. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, so we will move on to our regular agenda. And I need an adoption of that agenda. Any additions? Councillor Conick?
Well, we have the two additions, so I would move that we adopt the agenda as amended.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll call the vote then. All those in favor? Thank you. Unanimous. And we will move on to our first, we have the people here for our water presentation. Are they going to be online? They will be. Okay, then we'll move on to 4.1, water loss technical assistant presentation. And that is Tim Manigo, Director eSource, and they will be with us remotely. The floor is
Hi,
yours.
everyone. Can you see and hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Well, good evening, council members. I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to present on the water loss work that we started this year with the City of Lacombe. We're incredibly happy to be working with the city and excited to help you folks develop a water loss program. So let me start sharing my slides with you folks. Okay, here we go. Great. Can you see the first slide with the agenda?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay, so during this presentation, we'll go over some background and goals of this water loss work, project and task overview so you can see what we're planning to do and where we're currently at, a timeline, and next steps. So just to give you folks some background on how we evaluate and estimate water loss, this is a depiction of the water balance, which is the foundation of the water audit, and it's essentially a mass balance approach. So water loss work is difficult because the volume that we're trying to understand is occurring underground or is occurring due to paper losses. So we have no good way to actually measure this. So instead, we turn to other data sources that are being collected and pair that with this mass balance approach. So we start off here where each of these columns are an equal volume of water. So we have your total volume of water supplied, This is the volume entering your distribution system. And then this is equal to authorized consumption plus water losses. So to calculate water losses, all we're doing is taking total volume of water supplied, deducting authorized consumption, and that's how we come up with this estimate. But the water audit takes these things one step further. And for instance, we further categorize authorized consumption into what's billed versus what's not billed. And that's because this contributes to revenue water, while unbilled consumption contributes to your non-revenue water. Another clear difference in what the water audit does is that it categorizes your water losses into what are called apparent losses and real losses. So real losses, this is physical leakage occurring in your system. Those drips and leaks that are occurring throughout, some of which you deal with on a year-to-year basis, others are occurring and they're unknown. There's also this other loss called apparent losses, and these are what we refer to as paper losses. So these volumes are successfully delivered to an end use, but the uses aren't registered or accounted for properly. And the biggest contributor here is typically customer metering inaccuracy. So you have a customer meter that reads only 9 units, but 10 are delivered to the customer. That's what we consider a paper loss because it's only lost on paper, not physically lost to the system. Another key point we do like making is the difference between water loss and non-revenue water. So you can see that non-revenue water includes both water loss and the unbilled portion of your authorized consumption. And the main reason I bring all of this up is because there's a lot of terminology differences as you go across industries and different departments. And in the water loss world, these distinctions are very important to the sort of work that we do. Now to go over some of the goals for this project. So the original intent of this was to understand and evaluate the total volume of water loss occurring in the city's distribution system. And our initial way of doing this was to perform what's called a level 1 validation of the water audit to verify that the audit was compiled correctly in accordance with M36 methodology. This we've actually already completed, and it really is the first step to any water loss program. In addition to that, we're hoping that we can assist the city with developing an action plan to improve water loss. And to do this, we're hoping to document existing practices. That way we can identify opportunities to improve the accuracy and confidence in those water loss inputs or water audit inputs. We also hope that we can identify opportunities for water loss reduction and optimization. So figuring out what water loss makes the most sense for your city given its system characteristics and financial characteristics. So to accomplish these goals, we've scoped 3 primary tasks. So water audit validation, we kind of already talked about. This gets at that first goal of assessing the water loss occurring in your system. Task 3, the water loss gap assessment, is our attempt at achieving the second goal. So with this, what we're hoping is to inventory all of the city's existing practices related to water audit related data collection and management, so we can identify improvements that could possibly be made. And lastly, we actually added this additional task of detailed billing analysis. And that's because billing data is one of the largest data sets we encounter when performing a water audit. There's a lot that can go wrong when summarizing billing data, so it's often worthwhile to assess the integrity and verify that the billing data set accurately reflects customer consumption. So these are the 3 tasks that are upon us this year. And like I said, we've already completed water audit validation. We performed that interview toward the end of August, where we reviewed summary data that the city put together for us and had a call to discuss the various inputs and various data practices occurring at the city. The final deliverable for this was a validated water audit, which, like I said, is the first step to any water loss program. And we also included some notes and a validation certificate. Also, based on the call and what we learned about the city, we were able to come up with a list of high-level recommendations. And to give you a preview, this is the results of the water audit validation. So now what we have here in the figure on the left is that water balance that I showed you folks earlier, but it's now populated with the values for the city. The figure on the right actually shows this to scale. So really quickly want to note, this figure is clearly not to scale. Your water losses is not equal to your authorized consumption volume, so you don't have to worry about that. The figure on the right shows everything to scale. Down below, we have some key performance indicators calculated by the water audit. And it's key to note that many of these indicators are normalized indicators. So as you see, cost is in dollars per connection per year, and the volume indicators are in liters per connection per day. And the reason that the water audit presents results like this is to allow for comparison across various agencies of different size, so that you can see how you stack up against some other agencies that might be of a different size than you. On the water loss side of things, we have the indicators separated into apparent loss and real loss. So like I said, apparent losses are those paper losses. One key thing with apparent losses is when you recover apparent losses, you're actually increasing your revenue. Like I said, say for instance, you have meters that are only registering 9 units of water, but 10 were delivered to the customer. If you go and reduce your apparent losses, that will lead to an increase in your revenues because now you're accounting for the volumes delivered to customers appropriately. Real losses on the other side, this is physical leakage occurring in your system. So oftentimes it can be costly to recover that because you're now having to go and repair leaks. And I know that these indicators can be a bit difficult to wrap your head around if you haven't seen them before. So it's difficult to understand what they even mean. And just to jump to the punchline here, what your water audit suggests is that there is recoverable leakage in your system. So it is absolutely beneficial and worthwhile to develop a water loss program. But to determine your goal, what you want to drive this real loss number to, we'd want to perform an economic analysis of water loss savings. In other words, we want to calculate what we call the economic level of leakage for your system, given your leakage profile and the cost of water. So how much leakage optimizes the cost of leak intervention against the benefits of leakage reduction? And I know originally there was this goal of 13% water loss. And I think that's a really great starting point. You want to have some sort of goal when you first begin a program. And so that 13% was, I believe, a Canada average. But as the program develops and evolves, it's actually really beneficial to determine a real loss goal that is right sized for your system and financial characteristics. So that's where we're hoping the program can get to, is coming up with a leakage target specific to your system. Because what your water audit suggests is, yes, there's leakage on the table to recover, but would it be cost beneficial to go ahead and recover that leakage? That's the big question. These real loss indicators over here, this gives you your current real loss in megaliters per year, so about 192. This unavoidable real loss basically tells us, so you're going to have real loss occurring in your system no matter how proactive you are. Not all of this 192 megaliters is going to be recoverable. There is a portion of it that's just what we call the cost of doing business. When you have a pressurized distribution system, it is going to leak. This unavoidable real loss volume is an estimate, a theoretical modeled estimate of what the minimum volume of leakage is that can occur in your system. So this infrastructure leakage index is the ratio between these two. It's saying that your system is currently leaking at a rate of 1.3 times that technical minimum volume. So typically this is a much easier indicator for folks to get their head around, but when trying to optimize your leakage level, we tend to look at this real loss indicator in liters per connection per day. One key point that I really do want to make of why we tend to use indicators such as this rather than a percentage indicator is because we found that percentage indicators are potentially misleading, especially when tracking water loss volume over time. So, and the main reason for that is because your denominator, your total volume of supply, can change from year to year. So say, for instance, you folks had a really dry and hot year where folks were using a lot more water because of the dry conditions. Your water loss volume might not change. So you could have the exact same water loss volume year after year, but your percentage indicator would make it look like you decreased your water losses because your denominator is now much larger. Then say you folks implemented some water conservation efforts, and now you're able to drive down consumption, which in turn drove down your supply. Again, your total water loss volume didn't change, but now it looks like your water loss percentage drastically increased. So if you look at this in a time series, what it would appear is that you folks are have increasing water loss, and this would set off red flags when in fact your total water loss volume had remained the same year after year. And this is why we tend to recommend using something more like these indicators rather than a percentage. And finally, here are some of the high-level recommendations we developed based on the validation call. And I say very high level because we hadn't had a chance to dig into the practices and talk to the staff about what was occurring related to data collection, management, and maintenance activities. But some of the opportunities that we identified during the water audit validation is for water supplied, performing volumetric accuracy tests on the supply meters. And the reason for all of these inputs or these recommendations is because this is a mass balanced approach. Any error in the water audit inputs will lead to an equal error in the estimate of your real loss, of your leakage. So focusing on accurately quantifying all of the inputs in the water audit is step one to establishing an accurate baseline of water loss occurring in your system. We don't want to make any decisions based on bad inputs. So what we say with the water audit is garbage in, garbage out. What we really want the water audit to do is accurately reflect the leakage occurring in your system so we can perform that economic analysis and we can make the correct decisions on whether intervention will be cost effective. So water supply is a really big piece of that. And if your meters, for instance, are inaccurate, we won't have a good sense of how much volume is entering your distribution system. So performing these accuracy tests are really critical. We found that they can have a huge impact on the water audit results. Another recommendation is for the billed metered portion of your authorized consumption, performing a detailed investigation of the billing data because a lot can go wrong when calculating this input. And in fact, this is already in progress. This is one of those tasks that we already began this year. Finally, for apparent losses, it would be calculating your customer metering inaccuracy. This is usually the largest component of apparent losses, and in order to come up with an accurate customer metering inaccuracy value, we recommend testing small and large customer meters and using those results to calculate the input. So I know the city had already performed some small meter accuracy tests. However, those were done on what we call a biased sample. Those were meters flagged for a specific reason for testing. But for the water audit's purposes, our goal is to understand how your entire meter population is doing. And in order to get a good sense of that, you have to perform a random sample of testing on your small customer meters. On the other side, we have your large meters, and we tend to treat those more like assets. There are much fewer of those in your system, so it's often worthwhile to test those on a regular schedule to prevent revenue losses due to meter under registration. Because for those meters, for your largest consumers in the system, an under registration of 2% can have quite large revenue impacts because you're not registering the full volume of water going to those customers. Also, because there's less of those meters in the system, it's much easier to test those on a regular schedule versus testing 4,000 to 5,000 of the small customer meters. And just to illustrate a little bit of how these sorts of things can impact the water loss, this is basically a depiction show for water supplied. Our goal here is always accurate volume of water supplied. So say we know that the volume is 1,000. and then we know the consumption is 900, would calculate about a water loss value of 100. But what happens if we underestimate supply by 2%? Oh, sorry, overestimate supply by 2%. Now what's going to happen is that this water loss volume increases by a much larger percentage. So now we're overestimating water loss by 20%. But we only overestimated supply by 2%. And the same thing is occurring on the other side of things. If we underestimate supply, I'm sorry, these are wrong. This should say underestimate, overestimate, this should say underestimate. If we underestimate supply by 2%, we could overestimate our water loss by 20%. So what may seem like a very, very small inaccuracy in water supplied actually has a huge, huge impact on our water loss volumes, which is why we really stress the accuracy in each of the water audit inputs. Speaking of impact, billing data contributes to the second largest input to your water audit, which is why we wanted to focus so much on your billing data analysis. We wanted to review the integrity and verify the audit input. So we're currently performing this more detailed analysis. And the main reason for that is there's a lot that can go wrong from when the meter is read to when we create the summary reports that are used to calculate your water audit input. So we want to make sure that we're minimizing the errors as much as possible. For the water audit, what's really difficult is all of these processes and all of these records. In the end, we need to calculate one value for the water audit. And all of these errors can be carried through to our end product. So we want to make sure that we understand these processes, we understand where error can be introduced so we can come up with a standardized way of compiling these reports and also figure out ways to minimize these errors from occurring. One way that we do this is by performing a variety of integrity analyses. So the cities already sent us their billing data so we can perform these analyses. Some of those have to do with duplicates analysis, negative use, looking for errors in the reads, taking a look at general monthly trends because you can often find anomalies by doing that, and then comparing to other summary data. Prorating is something that we do for a lot of agencies because often with billing data, the dates that the consumption meters are read don't align with the production meters. But for the city of Lacombe, we've actually found this is not as big of an issue because they do a really good job of reading the production meters at the same time as the customer meter. So they try to read all of the customer meters at the end of the month so that these volumes much more closely align with when your production meters are read. So that's really good news for the city. And finally, we get to this water loss gap analysis. And the goal here is just to identify potential improvements and recommendations that can feed into an action plan for the city on improving your water loss program. In order to do this, we are performing a variety of calls with city staff to document, like I said, those current practices contributing to water loss assessment. And we want to create an inventory of those practices so that in the future they can be done in a standardized way. That way the audit is compiled in the same way every year, and then changes in the water audit won't be due to someone new coming in and calculating the water audit. We want the water audit, like I said, to accurately reflect the volume of water loss occurring in the system. Eventually, after these calls and the mapping of a variety of processes, we're hoping to develop a written report which describes the inventory of practices, as well as come up with a list of recommendations for water loss control activities that can hopefully feed directly into the action plan that the city is hoping to develop. These are just some of the conference calls, the topics of the conference calls that we've already had, just to give you folks an idea of all of the items we've discussed so far and all of the things that can contribute to water loss assessment. The really interesting thing about water loss work is it often spans and goes across a variety of departments. So It's a great activity to bring these departments together and talking to each other to understand what each is doing and how each play a role in this water loss work. And to give you an idea of the timeline of this, we're hoping, so we already completed the water audit validation. The billing analysis and gap assessment is currently occurring, and we're hoping to finish those by end of January 2023 and the end of March of 2023. And we're currently having this council presentation now. Eventually, once this is all complete, we're hoping this can fit into the city's overall or larger water loss control strategy. And that might look something like this. Step one is initiating the program. That's kind of where we're at right now, where we establish the initial program goals, we compile and validate an initial audit and document existing practices so that we can identify opportunities for improvement. Step two is improving the data. We want to improve data collection and management. We want to test your instrumentation, and we want to establish your true water loss baseline. Like I said, this is a critical task in developing any water loss program so that the decisions that are made are based on the volume of water loss truly occurring in your system and not due to bad data. We're hoping to refine the analysis after that by doing what's called a real loss component analysis. And what this will do is calculate that economic level of leakage, your target goal of leakage given your system's characteristics. And if necessary, if it's worthwhile and cost beneficial, maybe start piloting some leak detection. And finally, as a last step, is intervention. So either implementing full system leakage intervention strategies if the real loss component analysis says that it's worthwhile, and then finally establishing long-term program goals and activities. And with that, I'll take on any questions you folks may have.
Thank you, Kim. That was very informative. Appreciate the information. Have a couple of questions. One of them being our current water loss that you're seeing, how does that compare to average?
Great question. So your total water loss, I would say, is really comparable to what we see in the state of California. In fact, it might be a little bit less than what we're seeing in the state of California. But because your cost of importing water is quite high, that's why we think it makes sense for you folks to come up with your economic level of leakage. We really want to take into consideration the cost benefit of reducing that leakage, but making sure that you'll have a good return on investment.
Thank you. And the other question was, when you do this analysis, you're comparing our system to comparable systems of the similar age, is that correct?
No, so that's something that could be done with these indicators. So unfortunately, there isn't a great data set that I've been able to find with Canadian water agencies. We have a great data set in the state of California, but again, the systems are going to be very different from your peers in Canada. I'm continuing to search for those so that you can have some sort of comparison. But like I said, in the end, I think the goal for you folks is to come up with a target that's based on that economic analysis, that you'll have a good return on investment and can find out what your right size volume of leakage is for your system.
Thank you, Kim. Any further questions for Kim? Seeing none, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, can I get a motion to accept that as information? Councillor Dallas?
Thank you. Motion to receive the presentation as information.
Thank you.
Sorry.
All those in favor? Unanimous? Thank you. CEO Gowdy, I see, did we miss something there regarding the key performance indicators? There's a motion,
That was part of the consent agenda.
just part of the consent agenda. Okay, thank you. It shows it as regular resolution. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we will move on then to no public hearings. City Hall renovation project, Director Piche.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. Before council this evening, administration is asking for direction from council regarding the front office renovation project. The 2022 budget allocated $250,000 to complete the upgrades to the finance, planning and development areas, as well as the front foyer. The administration surveyed which changes or upgrades would be necessary to staff. The top priorities were secure environments and ergonomic furniture and counters. Other preferences for some staff were improved privacy, aesthetically pleasing areas, and efficient use of space. Administration contracted an interior designer, Sublime Design, to provide us with some options for improving the space. We worked with the designer to meet the needs of the staff and the public and to ensure that the finishes carry out from the new council chambers into the rest of the office being upgraded. Attached to the RFD is a design layout that the affected departments agreed would work more functional, secure, and have better work zones for each department. The public areas would have a better traffic flow, more extensive counters, a self-help kiosk, and an available bathroom that wouldn't require secured access. The designer was also able to get some indicative pricing for this build from a local contractor, and it was estimated at $228,000. However, this price does not include a contingency fund, furniture, or accommodation of city function or city staff during the construction. The 2023 capital budget will have a request for additional funds to meet all of the costs to complete this renovation, should council decide to move forward. However, if this project does move forward, there will be a disruption to City Hall access for staff and the public. There is no set timeline as of yet. However, conservative estimates of this project could take up to 6 months for vacating, doing the construction, and re-entry to the building. Administration is yet to prepare an RFP or a request for proposal package. However, due to the service interruption, we seek council's input on whether they are prepared for us to move forward with this project. Should council decide to move forward with the project, administration recommends to make a slight change to the motion so that it states that council directs administration to create and issue an RFP package that includes a construction timeline and an accommodation strategy for the City Hall renovation project and return to council for further direction. In the RFD, there is a notation that states that we would come back to council due to the estimated costs. However, that was based on a past procurement policy and not the current one, which is why adding the clause to return to council for further direction will ensure that it will come back to council. At this time, I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Piche. I think everybody's aware of my feelings about renovations on this building. I am not in favor of any of them, so it's pretty simple for me, but any questions for Director Piche? Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. When I was first elected, there was and I've said this before, when I was first elected, there was on the 10-year capital plan a plan to replace City Hall. Here we are 12 years later, and that has not occurred. And if you look at the new 10-year capital plan, there's still no plan for a new City Hall. So unlike the Deputy Mayor, I am in favor of doing this because we're in this building for the long haul. Let's be honest, we'll be here for many years to come yet. And so I think it's terrific, the yearly designs. I'm a little worried, as always, with the monies. For example, I don't know if the contractor you brought in, did he take into account like putting a washroom just over here? Like, can that be done easily and all that? That's my first question. Go ahead.
I wouldn't say easily, but it can be done.
Okay. Well, I suspect nothing that we do in this building will be easy, but no, I think it's terrific. The other question I have, I like the reducing access, well, provided that mayor and council can get a fob, otherwise I may not be in favor, but anyways. Because of course we've been very lucky as a council to have unfettered access. So I would hope that would continue with these new renovations. The other question I have is going down the stairs when you come in the front door, will that be closed off and that will be fob access as well?
That would include part of the security access. That strategy would be included there.
Okay, thank you. No, I think it's unfortunately it's going to cost a few bucks, but we're here easily for the next 20 plus years. So anything we can do to increase security, increase employee satisfaction and better use of the space, I am in favor of. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Koenig. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. I agree 100% with Councillor Koenig, and I would like to move that Council directs administration to create and issue an RFP package that includes a construction timeline and an accommodation strategy for the City Hall renovation project. And I missed those words, that it will return to Council for further.
And return to council for further direction.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoekstra. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? So one opposed. Okay, we'll move on to item 6.2 then, the 2023 operating budget and 2-year operating plan draft, and that is Senior Manager McKinnon.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor Gullickson and Council. Tonight, I'm presenting the proposed 2023 operating budget. On August 15th, 2022, Council provided direction to administration to prepare the 2023 budget based on a 5.4% tax rate increase and a 1% special paving tax. 5.4% is the average of the Alberta CPI increases for the 12 months from July 1st, 2021 to June 2022. The proposed 2023 budget includes a 5.4% tax increase, 1% special paving tax, and utility revenue increases of 5.4%, 2.4%, and 3.6% for water, wastewater, and solid waste services, respectively. A comparison of the total budget changes by major expense and revenue categories are shown in Appendix 1 to this report. The city's compensation policy ties the cost of living allowance equivalent to the Alberta Consumer Price Index. The COLA calculated is based on the average of the Alberta CPI increases for the last 12 months from July to June of 2022. Council's preliminary direction in August was to target the 5.4% COLA. Appendix 2 shows a comparison of the departmental wages and benefits budget in 2023 compared to 2022. Appendix 3 shows a breakdown of the changes in wages and benefits for each of the departments broken out by COLA, new positions, allocations, step increases, benefit changes, and reorganizations. Community groups presented to Council on October 11th Council meeting. Their requests have been included in the proposed 2023 operating budget that is presented today. Appendix 4 shows a comparison of the grants to organizations requested in 2023 compared to 2022. Reserve contributions. Administration has increased reserve contributions in the 2023 budget to minimize future borrowing. The proposed transfers to tax-supported reserves has increased by approximately $340,000 from the 2022 budget. The 1% special paving tax offsets equivalent of $160,000 increase in a transfer to the roads reserve. The other significant increase is a transfer to the fleet replacement reserve to offset the increased cost of replacing fleet in the City of Lacomb's 10-year capital plan. Appendix 5 shows a comparison of the transfers to reserves in 2023 versus 2022 budgets. Appendix 6 shows a proposed operating budget for 2023 and the 2024 and 2025 operating plans. Appendix 7 shows several items that were originally included in the proposed operating budget, but not included in the budget presented today. In addition, a $100,000 transfer from the operating reserve has also been budgeted to help offset one-time expenditures for 2023. The next steps are each council member will receive a binder that's in the corner of the room with the operating and capital details. The budget workshops that are scheduled are going to be October 31st and November 1st, where we'll go through the details. Council will then begin to deliberate the operating and capital budget on November 14th, 2022. I'm happy to take any questions.
I just had one question. $40,000 increase in the phones. That will be coming forward. I'm sure the explanation for that, or CEO Gowdy, maybe you have clarification on that?
Yes, I believe that what that is that we don't budget a set amount every year for cell phone replacements. It's whatever is actually being replaced that year, and that there's a number of phones being replaced this year. However, we will confirm that and have that information for you for the budget.
Thank you. And thank you. And the other one I just noticed too was $25,000 for aerial photographs. Do we do that on an annual basis?
No, the last time aerial photos were taken was March of 2020. May of 2020, I'm sorry.
Okay, and how does that, we can't use Google Earth for that either. We have to use our own photos. Is that correct?
So no, unfortunately, Google Photos and Google Earth doesn't have the resolution that would be required for our purposes.
Thank you very much.
And I think they're also further out of date than 2020. Persuaded, correct.
Councilor Hoekstra?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just have a question about Appendix 1, and it's showing the increase and decrease on lines. Can you remind us again what the green numbers are versus the red numbers versus, just for people who are looking at this?
Sure.
Thank you for that. Anything else? Councilor Conick?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. I won't, we're going to hash this out, obviously, during the budget workshops. I won't talk too much about it other than when you see these numbers again and you're like 5.4 is significant. So I'm hoping we can trim that down some more yet, because that's a big ask in 1 year. I mean, in my time on council, we've done bigger than that, and it's not very comfortable. So we're looking at some tougher years again. So I'm hoping, at any rate, that we can maybe find some savings and bring that number down. Thank you.
Councilor Hibbs?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add at this moment because we are going to have a couple of days to hash that out. So I would move that council accept the proposed 2023 operating budget report for information.
Thank you for that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote then. All those in favor? Thank you. It's unanimous. Move on to our next item then, 2023 capital budget draft, Senior Manager McKinnon.
I'm here again to present for council's deliberation, the proposed 2023 capital budget. The City of Lacomb's 2023 draft capital budget includes 32 projects, which are listed in the report. The total expenditures is estimated at $10.35 million. The proposed capital budget will be funded by 2.87 million from grants, 6.04 million from reserve withdrawals, 750,000 from debentures, and 690,000 from other contributions. The draft 2023 capital budget will be discussed on October 31st workshop. On November 14th, an updated 2023 capital budget will be presented to council to deliberate. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. Any questions for Manager McKinnon? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gulson. I'm assuming on your ordering a fire truck because of the lack of supply and the timeline, that would be over a 2 or 3 year timeline. So like 550 times 2 or 3 years, however long it takes to build it.
Yes, I believe it is $2 million for one of the pieces, 700,000 for another, and a little higher even for the third. So those will be in your capital project summaries. And perhaps Director Piche can just tell us what those years are for those projects.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, CEO Gowdy. So the one engine does require a 2-year build, which I believe we have $450,000 for the first year and $550,000 for the second year. And then for the ladder truck to replace the Bronto or the aerial one, that is actually a 3-year build. And I believe there's a in 2024, I believe, I would have to double check, 200,000 for the first deposit. And then I think 700,000 for the second, and then the balance in the third for almost 2 million for the third deposit on that.
Thank you, Director Piche. Any further questions? Seeing none, can we get a motion? Councillor Hibbs.
I'm sorry, I think I just clicked on the wrong one, but I'm assuming I'm making the motion to accept the capital budget as information for 2023. Sorry, I had it on the wrong page.
Thank you for that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. So we'll move on to the 10-year capital plan. Manager McKinnon again, thank you.
Thank you. I'm here to present the first draft of the 2023 to 2032 capital plan. Purpose of the 2023 to 2032 capital plan is to outline the future capital requirements of the City of Lacombe based on Council's priorities and existing infrastructure maintenance requirements. The first year of the capital plan is the 2023 capital budget, which will be approved to authorize expenditures for the City of Lacombe. The remaining 9 years, 2024 to 2032, are for planning only and are not authorizations for expenditures. The projects by division for the 2023 to 2032 plan can be found on Appendix 1, 10-year capital plan. The estimated capital expenditures represented in the 2023 to 2032 capital plan are $80.7 million before inflation. Appendix 2 shows the capital expenses by year of the plan. The estimated funding sources for the capital plan are debentures, 10 million, grants, 23.2 million, reserve withdrawals, 42.5 million, and outside sources, 5 million. Appendix 3 illustrates the funding sources broken down by each year of the 10-year capital plan. Major projects considered within the 2023 to 2032 capital plan include the Capital Works Program, total cost $5.7 million. Fire station building, total cost $5 million. Fire ladder truck replacement, total cost $2 million. Roads Renewal Program, Capital Works, which runs from 2024 to 2032, $16.2 million. And new water reservoir and decommissioning of Pump House B is a total cost of $11 million. Debt financing is a major source of capital funding for municipalities. The tax rate increase due to additional borrowing in the plan is shown in Appendix 4. Appendix 5 shows the 10-year debt servicing projection broken down by tax supported, utility supported, and offsite supported financing. The City of Lacombe's 2022 to 2032 capital plan are based on several assumptions which are outlined in the report. And the next steps in the budget process are to finalize the capital plan, which Council will review on the October 31st workshop. The budget deliberations again will occur on November 14th, 2022. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Manager McKinnon. Any questions for our manager? Seeing none, that's nice. We'll work on that, I think, on November 1st. Is that correct? Is when we look at that? 31st, we work on that too. Okay, all right. Okay, really good. Thank you very much for that. Then I will look for Councillor Conick.
Just quick, have we scheduled another additional days, just the 31st and 1st? Or is the second tentatively planned as well?
It's just the 31st and 1st at this point. In going back many years, we did have 3 days. It hasn't been required in the last 5 to my knowledge. And so we optimistically have not held that 3rd day, but certainly if it comes to it, we can schedule another day or have a special meeting.
Thank you for that question. I was wondering too. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. I move that council accepts the proposed 2023-2032 capital plan report for information.
Thank you very much. Call the question. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to 6.5, which came out of our consent agenda, the CAO report. And I asked for that to come forward for a specific reason in this case, to look at our councillor expense disclosure. And if you've looked at it, you notice none of us, we're all over budget. So I think, yeah, well, I think we're going to be over. I think we're going to be over budget. Well, I shouldn't say all of us, but I think we're going to be there eventually. So it looks like we're going to be in a position where we're going to have to look at maybe increasing those amounts or changing the way we do it. And we can do that at budget time. Is that not correct? CEO Gowdy?
Yes, you certainly have that.
Okay. And just some clarification, like for example, we had some discussion of this at the meetings I was at recently, and they've pulled like FCM and AUMA or AB munis out of the budget for the councillors. Those are separate. And then they have a separate number for their councillor expenses, so that people that go to FCM and AB munis, it's not really skewed compared to the other councillors. So it's something for us to look at outside of that. Do you have any other information to provide, CEO Gowdy, regarding that?
No, I think that's good. Right now, as you pointed out, FCM and AB munis are separated. Those conferences are separated from the general travel and training budget of council. And many municipalities have moved towards a consolidated budget where it's discretionary. There's not a set amount, say $10,000 per councillor, and it's discretionary as to how that councillor chooses to spend that travel and training budget on an annual basis. So whether they choose to go to AB munis or FCM in a given year is actually to their option.
Thank you for that. Any other questions regarding those expenses? Anything else coming out of the CAO's report? Do we need a motion to accept it as information? It was not part of the consent agenda then. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. I move that we accept the CAO report as information.
Thank you. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Did we have one other item?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. Yeah, so I had asked for the minutes to be removed from the consent agenda because I had noticed that when recording actually the items that were removed from the last consent agenda, that there was a motion there, for example, that council accepts the 2022 fall coffee with council summary as information, and that it was carried unanimously, but it was not noted actually who made that motion, as well as the following one, which was the adoption of the minutes. So I believe I know it was myself that did the fall council summary. And I believe it was Councillor Hoekstra that moved for the adoption of the minutes, but I could be incorrect on that, but just for that correction.
Thank you, Councillor Hibbs. Do we need a motion to accept that? Yes, we do, because it came out of the consent agenda. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm, Councillor Hibbs. It is moved by Councillor Hibbs for the 2022 fall coffee and council summary, and the adoption of the minutes for September 26 was moved by Councillor Hoekstra.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hibbs.
So with those corrections, then I would move that we adopt the minutes of the, sorry, I don't have the date in front of me, October 11th, 2022 minutes as amended.
Thank you. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. That's the end of our regular meeting. To just getting to the in-camera session. Councillor Hibbs.
I'll make the motion that council move in camera.
Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you very much.